Hey Sangita, morning. How are you?
Good today.
All right, that's good to know. It's a beautiful Saturday morning, and I hope you're having a good time.
Oh, I am. And if you ask me to talk about HR, I'm even more happier. So bring on the questions.
Yeah, that's great. Fine. So, everybody listening to us today, this is Sangita Nair. She has a career in talent management with over 2 decades of experience across various industries. She's currently based in Bangalore, and her expertise basically lies in translating organizational goals into human centric strategies. So, today she has graced the corridors of Masters Union, basically, like other firms that she has worked with such as Standard Chartered Bank, Symphony, Razorpay, Zinnier, and now with the YZ startup again, Sitsq. So yeah, so it's an honor to welcome you, Sangita. Glad to have you here.
I'm really happy to be here. Ask me whatever you want.
Sure. Yeah. So to kick things off, I like to dive into talent strategy. Yeah. So basically, I would like to understand how do your talent acquisition strategies usually align with the vision and goals of an organization?
Um, to keep it short, see, um, vision is a where you want to get to as a company, where you want to be, right? It's important to understand what is going to take you there, what kind of action strategies, most importantly, who is going to take you there. Right? We can build all the AI and chat GPT and all the automation that we can, but people are building it eventually, right, to serve people. So who's going to take you there is very important. Now, it's not always that the people available in the organization have those kind of skills. For example, you want to be a unicorn in the next 3 years. Now, to be a unicorn, it means a lot of efficiency, it means a lot of forward thinking, a lot of strategizing. It also means a lot of firefighting and being able to see the bigger picture. Not just one person seeing the bigger picture, many people understanding that bigger picture and what all contributes, estimation what will contribute to its success or failure, right? So, do we have those kind of people in the organization? That's where your talent acquisition strategy kicks into place, saying, okay, who should I get for this kind of role? If I can't train people in the company, do I get youngsters who are, very enthusiastic? So there are different generations at work, right? We have 3 generations at the workplace now. We have Gen X who are my age and above. We have millennials who are my age and younger. Then we have Gen Z who's just turning 28, 29, right? And each one has their own strengths. Like Generation X comes with so much experience and wisdom now about they know what to look for, what's going to work, what's not going to work, right? The millennials, they love experimenting. So they're willing to fail. They know how to pick themselves up from failure. And Gen Z has so much risk taking capability. They rebel against everything, which is all right. But then they're the ones who are telling, I think they are much more risk takers than any workplace has seen so far. So, depending on the management of the organization, depending on which generation they come from, it's most likely they'll decide who do we want to take us forward. Right. So, your talent acquisition strategy is all about what kind of people and what kind of skills are going to take us forward. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, that answers my question. But on this, like, I do have a follow-up question. Now that you mentioned that we have 3 generations at workplace, and yeah, people have different mindsets. So my question, would be like, how do you maintain a balance between like the required skill sets and the cultural diversity that is required in an organization? Because uh, personality is a very individualistic thing, and it might so happen that that 2 individuals or like some individuals are aligned with the long-term vision and goals, but there's a personality mismatch. So that's where you really have to make an effort into people management, right? Or like just how do you make sure that you hire the right kind of people who can work together?
You know, uh, yes, generational differences, how they play out mostly in organizations. All these small arguments and petty fights, right, they become apparent because you're not able to express frustration about one person not doing something the way you want to do, and it turns into lots of other smaller things. And that's why there's so much emphasis on diversity and respecting diversity now, because all this unexpressed frustration can get channeled into let's jibe a person for being from some other place or for not aligning with our thinking ways of thinking. So that's why respecting diversity is becoming so important, and the way to make that happen is the value system and the guiding principles. Every company has to decide and invest time in deciding how do we want to live what are our ways of working in this organization? So the practices you put in place. For example, if you think we have to celebrate people irrespective of where they are from, who they are, and that kind of company will start celebrating tenure anniversaries, birthdays. They will have a larger wedding leave. They respect people for just being human beings, right? Another company which maybe loves the hustle culture will award people for getting things done very quickly. They might say, this person did this overnight, kudos for that. So your practices that you establish reflect the kind of culture you want to build in the organization. And respecting each other, that diversity is sort of woven in all of these practices. And that's how you can. So if you want to build bridges between different generations at work and get the best out of them, as an organization, you have to decide, here are our values. We live by these values. I don't care if you're old, you're young, you're a woman, you're a man, you're a different gender, you're a different, any of that doesn't matter. This is the way we live. And respecting diversity, therefore, becomes a very important part of building culture nowadays.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I totally agree with you on this part, wherein like we have to establish some basic ground rules which remain intact for everyone in the organization, irrespective of who they are. And yeah, those should be the guiding principles. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thanks for answering my question. Okay, now coming to this, like we have discussed a bit about like hiring people and how do you bridge the gap. But there's also like often I've heard people say, especially like young founders, that they usually go ahead with a gut feeling, and then we also hear about data, right? So, what is your take on that? Like, how often do you think your gut feeling is usually right, and how do you maintain that balance between your instincts and data-based decisions?
I think the key is to first remember that human behavior is not standard. There's a whole science called psychology behind understanding people, right? And accepting that there are going to be different personalities at work, and each one is going to think differently is key to this. So for some people, intuition and gut, they live that way. You can't change them. Like so we say manufacturing defect, or this is the way I was born, this is the way I was made. It's just that, right? And there are people who are way more careful. They love to think through data, sit on data, maybe take a month, go and try some experiments, and then only take a decision. It's going to take a lot of different kinds of people to work together. And accepting that fact is very important for young founders. But that also brings, to light, and it's a good question you asked, Shweta, because it brings to light how some of the most successful companies that we see across the world now, the founders, they were very close and they shared core values. They shared very deep core values, and that's what's kept them together, right? And where there has not been an alignment in core values of the founders, those companies they haven't stayed together in the company, right? So think of the Infosys with Narayan Murthy and the entire band around him, Nandan Nilekani, Chris, all of them. They started in the garage, but the point is they started with the same core values. The garage is just a symbolism of why they started together, why Microsoft was started a certain way, why Facebook was started in a certain way, and then why the Facebook founders couldn't stay together, right?
Okay.
Mark Zuckerberg, the entire story of how he went with intuition. And so data, intuition, they're all different parameters. You have to learn how it works together. And I think in the younger years in general, that restlessness is good. I remember when I was young, I was so restless and I was very intuitive. And I would look at data which supports my intuition. Right? It may not have been the right way to go about it, but it took me a certain way. And it maybe took me 10, 15 years of working in large places and different people to understand, all right, there are benefits to all of us working together. So I think it's a journey that everybody has to go through. Some people are wise right when they're young and they say, okay, I'll make space for different kinds of people in my life, in my startup. Some say, no, it has to be my way or the highway. So I'll get people who agree with my way. Everything works.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I agree a bit on that. Like, yeah, I've seen that. That makes sense. Okay, so coming back to this question again, so it's usually very typical to go ahead with a lot of assessments or assignments during the interview process, right? And And I think like even myself as a candidate applying to multiple companies, I usually just drop it if I'm not really into the organization and I don't think it's worth it. I usually choose to drop out because I just really don't want to go through the entire process. If it's something which I really resonate with, if that's a company I want to work for, I will still go ahead with 5 rounds of interview. So what's your take on that? Like how do you think this fits into the picture, and what do you think should be an ideal assessment of a candidate look like?
So the assessments that the company puts in place is very reflective of the how careful the founders are being in the people that they select. It means that they've identified their core values. They're very clear.
Mhm.
And if you have to work with us, these are some things important to us, and we're not willing to compromise on it. But I don't know how to judge you on it. I don't know how to perceive what your skill set is. So I use psychometric assessments. And
Mhm.
as a candidate, that gives you also the freedom to say, do I really want to work with these people? They seem to be their risk taking ability is very less, and I'm a risk taker. So there, our core
Mhm.
values don't match. Or
Yeah.
maybe you find them paying too much attention to detail, micromanaging certain things, and you may not have the patience for it. But
Mhm.
what if you're the kind of person who has the patience for it, and they say,
Yeah.
doesn't impact me. They are perfectionists, they want to control every detail. I'm okay, I'll do it for them. I don't mind it. So I think psychometric assessments and the rounds of interview are a very good way to understand compatibility. It's literally like a matchmaking process, right? Because you're going to
Yeah.
invest your time, putting your effort, building their company. And they're going
Yeah.
to invest time sharing their knowledge, their expression, all that what do you say, ambition they have, they want to share that with you. So I
Yeah.
think it's a good compatibility testing that these psychometric assessments help us with. It's good actually. I think, and I've seen how these have been improving over time.
Mhm.
I'm pretty mind blown about some of the assessments. Like metal, when it came into Aeon brought metal, that
Mhm.
really changed the landscape, and they made Gallup run for the money in a way.
Mhm.
But then Gallup came back with strengths finders and so many. So this psychology and leveraging that to understand compatibility, I think it's taking on a whole new dimension, which is very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I have seen that happen like with multiple like college admissions as well. So I think yeah, I think that kind of makes sense. But yeah, again, like I would still stick to my point, like companies with 4 or 5 rounds of interviews are not my thing. So yeah.
So you know
Okay,
what?
anyway, like
Yeah, it basically
yeah.
means that you are a big risk taker. You love taking
Mhm.
leaps of faith, right? And I used to be that way as well. I resonate with what you're saying. I would take leaps
Mhm.
of faith. That's okay. A year later, I say, okay, fine. I took a leap of faith. It didn't work out. I'll try something else. That's fine. So I
Yeah.
think you should understand that's your strength. That even if
Yeah.
you're in hot water or hot oil, you will find a way to make it work. So that's strength you have. That's
Yeah,
nice.
so that's always been my thing as well. Like usually like in my career, like all of my jobs, like most of my jobs have been just something like which happened to me. I found it interesting and I just went ahead and explored it, and I figured I did fine. So it wasn't as bad. So yeah, I think I like that. That just keeps me excited throughout the journey.
That's good. That's good. You have a lot of fun coming your way. That
Yeah, okay. So I think like yeah, one of my last questions here would be now that we have discussed so much about like hiring a candidate and like assessments and the mindset and stuff. Since we have been like a bit focused on the startup kind of thing, I just want to understand like when you're a very young company, say for example with 2 or 10 people, like 10 people is like really young, right? But when the organization grows, when you evolve to become maybe a strength of 100 or 200, things change, right? So how do you manage that? How do you then make sure that everything is still aligned? Because that's a huge journey that you go into, right?
true, true. So let's not just startup. I think any company which is early age. So here's the thing: when Generation X begins a company, they may not call it a startup. They just say, "I started a company," while
Mhm.
youngsters might say it's a startup. So the labeling
Mhm.
also is different. But here's the thing: when you are small in size, 2 people, 5 people, 10 people, or even up to let's say 30, 40 people, you are behaving like
Mhm.
a community. There's so
Yeah.
much care for each other. There's so much support for each other. You're willing to do what it takes for each other's work as well, right? But when you
Mhm.
begin growing in number, that community feeling is replaced by, listen, I need guidelines. We are a larger community, but then processes and guidelines have to work, because I will not be
Mhm.
able to know what 10 people think and how I can impact them, how they impact my work. So your personal reach in a larger organization goes down. So you resort, or you say, okay, I need a process, I need automation, I need tools to help me. Because I can't invest my time reaching out to 200 people, which means all the processes you make, which are very intimate and very controlled in the past, now you don't have control over them. You let computers take over or tools take over and say, I'll run this for you. So what changes when you grow is, number one, the biggest thing is, um, being willing to be imperfect. I have worked in consulting practices earlier, and I have friends, and we weren't willing to grow beyond 4 people as a team because we were perfectionists. And then we said, you know what, we'll never be able to grow beyond these 4 partners because we just want everything to be perfect like this. And once you give it to a team of 6 people, you don't even know how it's going to be. So being willing to drop perfection and be okay with imperfection, and then focus on the outcome and not what exactly will take you there, is a big mind shift that somebody has to make when they scale. Otherwise, they will not scale. So I know a lot of entrepreneurs who stuck with 25 people companies. They don't want to grow beyond that. They don't even take additional work because, like, no, this it's going to be too much for me to handle. I'm just right the way it is. If you're giving me a project and you're okay with it being delivered in 6 months rather than hire new people in 3 months, I'll do it for you. Otherwise, don't push me. So when a founder starts a company, usually there's a purpose, right? Some people start direct to consumer business because their purpose is to impact somebody directly. There are others who say, my purpose is larger. I want to enable large organizations to achieve something like this. So their life purpose translates into their work as well, like how life has become work for all of us. Right. So I know I took a very long-winded route, but did I answer your question?
Yeah, that was quite insightful. Okay. Yeah, I think what else? Okay, so I think my next question here would be yeah, so with everything that's ongoing currently, especially now that we have a lot of unicorns coming up like almost every year, right? And the trends are changing, especially with COVID and now with AI. So there's been a lot of changes across the industry. How do you keep yourself updated with all of these industry trends and updates that happen so that you can better meet the organizational goals?
So while conferences and people matters, I love what people matters does, what Esther is doing in people matters. She brings people, she provides a forum and people come and talk about what they're doing. But most important for me is my network. So all my friends in HR, so we're all on WhatsApp groups. Like I wanted to understand how adoption policy for leave is being done in, because the maternity law states a certain adoption policy, right? When you're adopting a child. But not all companies follow that because it's a guideline for government employees, not for private sector employees. So then I just had to ask 12 of my friends, and I got so many answers, right? From 2 weeks until 3 months. So my network in HR is very important. And this network is built over what the last 20 years of working. And it's so insightful how your network can get you so much clarity on the simplest things. Like even for example, when somebody was saying, listen, I'm opening a branch office in Sweden. Do any of you know a vendor or a partner who can help me with incorporating an office there? So then we all were talking to our finance people, our CFOs, and asking them, and then finding contacts for this friend of ours. So your network is always going to play a very important role. And if it's even better if you have a network which spans different functions in HR. Like my ex-manager, some of them are in consulting practices, and it's so helpful. They're at large consulting practices. So when I have a doubt about organizational design, I can ask them and they're mentoring me. You will find mentors along the way. You will find mentees. You will find coaches. So the longer you work, it's just going to get so interesting.
Yeah. Yes, I think I agree with you here. I really couldn't agree more. Like network is something so important, which I learned like really later in my career. I mean, like not really later. I'm still very early in my career, but yeah, a few years into that, I realized that the relationships that you build with your workplace, with your coworkers, with anyone you meet, basically, that takes you a long way. And these are people who are always going to be with you. So that's like a family away from family. That's how I think of them. And yeah, that really makes sense. And yeah, okay, just one last question, nothing to do with this, but it's just because I had it in my mind. You mentioned that like we hire all sorts of people, and in a very small company, it's usually like, you know, people care about each other, and there's a lot of emotions involved, right? So it might so happen that sometimes these don't really work so well, right? So how do you make sure that people use their emotions, they channelize those emotions in a direction that is that best suits them personally and professionally? Because again, coming back to your point, like now life is work, right? So we don't really have a balance between, like, there is no thing as work life balance. Our work is something which is a very intimate part of our lives, right? So how do you make sure that we channelize all of that into making sure we deliver efforts that make our time and the company's time worthwhile?
Um, in India specifically, we have a lot of trouble building boundaries for ourselves. It took me a very long time. I think only the last 5 6 years I learned how to build boundaries and be able to guard my boundaries very well, to say no to what can enter my space, what can't enter my space, and that comes with a lot of experience. And that's why our work and life mingle so much. Work friends become life friends. It is, and when that starts happening, that is the time you have to start investing in um, finding a mentor or a coach for yourself. um,
Yeah.
so why I am successful as a HR head is because, and why I like working in startups and why they might like me also is because these emotions are amazing. The emotions that are flying
Yeah.
around, how do you capture them and leverage them instead of wasting
Yeah.
them? That's something I'm very, very invested in. So when two people are passionately fighting over somebody, over something,
Mm.
I tell them, do you realize how much ownership you both are actually holding? And can we decide, okay, agree to disagree, or can we make some amount of participation between you? Let's divide it between both of you so you know what you will own, right? So
Yeah.
leveraging emotions is a beautiful art. There's a science which helps as well. Um, uh, I think the places where I've joined, right? I joined not early age startups when they were just beginning to scale. Um,
Mhm.
I have constantly been showing people how they're bringing emotion to work and how to
Mhm.
tap into it better. I teach them
Yeah.
psychology. As in, I like teaching them applied psychology, which helps them
Mhm.
understand. Oh, so this is why I'm feeling this way. This is why I'm talking this. Right now, I think I know how to go and change my frame of mind. So, what
Mhm.
is you've seen school counselors, you've seen
Mhm.
counselors lots of places, right? That's exactly what they do. They show somebody how to leverage emotion and channel it in the right direction, and that's also become a very big role for HR to do. We have to be coaches by default because you're working with young managers and managers who haven't had, I mean, literally kids who've not had any life events happen to them. They may not have had a heartbreak. They may not have lost a parent. They may not have had seen a certain kind of failure in life, which is impacting them or teaching them what pain is. How are they
Yeah.
supposed to feel, be responsible for other people in company when they haven't had a life event themselves? Young managers.
Yeah.
So our role in HR to be coaches has become very important. And if there is no such HR professional in the organization, I think it's each individual's responsibility to find a coach for themselves. And there are so many
Yeah.
companies offering coaching. There are very good coaches, onboarded with them. We just have to do that. I found a coach for myself some time back. While I'm an executive coach myself, I found a life coach for myself. And I said I
Yeah.
need to figure out what this is, because I would panic and I would have anxiety attacks if something wasn't happening the way I wanted to. With coaching,
Mhm.
I've learned how to be okay with imperfection, and they say, this is not going to impact me anymore. You wanted it a certain way, I'll do it for you, and that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, hearing you say that, like, I resonate so much with this. One of the reasons I took up this program is because I was looking for something like that, some sort of guidance. Because, yeah, like we all can learn something right along the way. Everybody has flaws. It's just like we accept and we let someone, like, we be vulnerable in front of someone and just allow them to shape us in a way that really helps us, right? So yeah, like having you here say that, I mean, like, yeah, it's just like I resonate with that. And this was was my most important takeaway from the entire session, and it's been really insightful and lovely talking to you, Sangita. I hope we can continue our conversation offline sometime. But today I'll let you go because I know your time is very limited and it's very precious. But yeah, thanks a lot for this.
Thank you for having me. I enjoy talking. And then, so yeah, I mean, you can ping me anytime and we can talk again. And you should do this with more people, because the more you hear from others who walk this path, it'll help you shape your path accordingly. It's going to be, growing up is fun. You know, despite everything, growing up is fun actually.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Okay,
having me, Smita.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sangita. Enjoy the rest of your day and we'll catch up soon.
Bye-bye.